Before we begin, here's how to earn continuing professional education credit for attending this session. Gain valuable insights by attending the podcast, then complete the assessment test to download your certificate. To do this, follow these simple steps. Click on the link in your description to access the session. Create a free account and attend the podcast. After the podcast, take the assessment test and download your certificate. It's easy, and it's free. We highly recommend checking out our subscription.
It's hard to talk about trends in HR because there's a new trend every day, it seems. And I probably shouldn't be so flip about it because, I've been doing this kind of work for a long time, but it is the truth. Things just, something gets created as, the next relevant topic.
Yeah.
And then there's a lot of buzz about it, right?
Yes.
And then Josh Bersin writes an article, and then Harvard Business Review publishes something, and then MIT Sloan School of Management, puts a new program together. So there's all this stuff that gets created in the wake of someone saying this is, the newest, hottest, latest work that's being done. I don't really think that there are any new trends right now that are worth spending a lot of time talking about, but I will say that what's happening is it's a little bit like what's old is now new again.
Yep. Because bottom line, every company deal with the human psyche, right? Human behavior, human attitude. So it doesn't matter what age category or what generation we are. We still, as a human, have some behavior and the mindset that determine how we work. So engagement and turnover and productivity and performance is a standard everywhere.
Yep.
You have to deal with them differently. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of HR Next, Unpacking Trends and Talent Innovations. I am Behnam Bakhshandeh, one of the hosts of HR Next podcast. Today's episode topic is the competency game changer, a transformative approach. Our guest today is Miss Annie Abrams. Annie is an award-winning, innovative entrepreneur, leadership coach, keynote speaker, and author with an extensive background in talent management strategy, leadership development, succession planning, DEI, sales, operations, and human resources, having worked with some of the world's most notable brands. She has designed and facilitated competency-based trainings for over 50,000 people and managed large-scale global initiatives. Recognized as a consultative, hands-on, proactive partner who can rapidly identify business essentials, formulate strategies, solutions, and create continuous organizational impact, Annie has been able to work with her clients to achieve success in exceeding business goals as well as implementing new processes in challenging, diverse environments. She is viewed as an individual who can balance inspiration, innovation, and objectivity while leading organizational change in partnership with her clients. As founder and managing operator and partner of 1107 Associates LLC, a global leadership development firm, Annie is responsible for the firm's strategy and management of operations and client services. Annie passionately partners with her team and clients to design and implement innovative worldwide programs and diversity initiatives that transform individuals and organizations. Annie has worked with clients from a wide variety of organizations, including Starbucks, Amazon, Microsoft, Salesforce, Apple, Nike, Columbia Sportswear, Amstrad and Industries, MSCI, Medidata, Groupons, and many more. Please join me to welcome Miss Annie Abrams. Hi, Annie. It's so great to have you here. Thank you for your time and make yourself available.
Thank you for inviting me, Behnam. Always a pleasure.
Absolutely. I am so impressed on the work you have done on the competency domain and all the things you wrote about and all the practices and tests you have done on multi-rated 360 assessment. It's very impressive. And I want you to be part of this podcast and contribute your great work with other people.
Great.
Very good. So I have set of questions in 2 or 3 different categories I would like to ask you. Informal, just contribute as your years or decades of knowledge contribute to people. First and most, what sparks your interest in customizing client competencies and multi-rater 360 assessment?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear everything you said. Can you say that one more time?
Absolutely. What sparks your interest in customizing clients' competencies and multi-rater 360 assessment?
So I started seeing a lot of assessments. I'm a little bit of an assessments geek. And so I was working for an assessment company. I had been there a lot of years. And so one of the things you do when you work at an assessments company is you compare your assessments to other company assessments. And what I noticed is that all of these 360s seemed like they were the same 360. They asked the same questions. It was like they were generic.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought, this doesn't really measure anything because every company has a different culture. Every company has a different mission. How a 360 should be utilized to assess a jive, fit with that company's culture and mission and vision and values. And so I started learning how to customize competencies so that the 360 assessment tool or any training class based on that competency reflected the way they wanted it to be reflected.
Very appropriate, yes, because you cannot just do the one size fit all. Companies' cultures are different, and even the personality of management is different or nature of the company. Well, good for you. Can you share a pivotal moment in your work with clients that shaped your understanding of why this is so important?
Do you want to earn CPE credit? Take this course of MyCPE 1 to earn free credit. Click the link in the description to get started.
So I was working with a particular client who is a leading global brand that everybody knows, uses, loves. Well, I don't know about love, but they definitely are very aware of this brand. And what I noticed was they were using a 360 that had been customized for them. And so when leaders took the 360, the feedback that they were getting was very instrumental in their development plans in the programs that got created for a particular group of people. And so when you do that and you can customize, the feedback, or you can customize the program, it is very targeted specifically for that leader or that group of leaders' growth. And that's exactly what happened. And it produced a 400% increase in engagement. It produced a 4,000, I mean, some crazy number, but it was like 4,000% increase in retention.
Wow, this is awesome.
Yes.
Skyrocket numbers.
It really was like mind-blowing, because if you could see like sort of where they were, where that group of people was, or they started their learning journey in the assessments, and then where it ended, it was really, really inspiring.
It is. I'm just hearing about it and I'm inspired. It's good for them and good for you. Very great. Annie, what resources or mentors have been instrumental in the development of the customized competencies and competency-based assessment tools?
Well, there are many libraries out there to take advantage of. I mean, I did work for a couple of large assessment companies, one of which was Korn Ferry International, which is the largest learning and development company in the world. And they are masters at this. And so they call it the architecture, like the libraries, and you pay for those architectures. And the architecture is not inexpensive, but it is targeted. And so, for example, if you have a role in sales or a role in engineering, you can identify the competencies by going through a series of steps to create an ideal profile. And then you can create a customized tool. And so I use really validated resources only for the competencies that I create for my clients and for the custom 60s I create for my clients.
Very great.
The other thing I think is important is that you need to know what you're doing, right? So if somebody says, integrity is really important in this company, what does that really mean? What does that look like when somebody has integrity?
Company, yes.
Their mission or their vision or their values, say that, this is key, and this is key. Okay, that's really great. But what does that really mean? What are the behaviors? And so, when I'm working on something like this, I typically want to go through some focus groups with clients. There's key people that I want to interview, to help me understand what that competency looks like for that company. Yes. If they're successfully demonstrating it.
Funny, I was going to ask, how do you know which competency you're going to use for which company? Obviously, you're not going to use one or two or three. There's a set that you choose. So walk me through that process out of curiosity. Let's say you come into my company or anybody else's company. Where do you start? How do you decide what competency served them the best?
So there are some, I'll call them like global competencies, okay, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
There are some competencies that are global to a particular type of position. So, for example, in sales, you need to have good interpersonal skills.
Yes.
Okay. You need to have the ability to influence. You need to be able to collaborate. So there's different skills, soft skills, that are pretty universal.
Yes.
But there are also company cultures that you have to take into account. And so, when I go visit a place, I am looking very carefully at how things get done, how people communicate with one another, So I was just visiting a client site last week, for example, and it was actually pretty cool because I have been working with this client for like 10 years, but I have never been to these two locations.
Huh.
And so I went to these two locations of this big global company, and I went on a tour of both of the facilities, and I got to meet with the facilities leader at both of the places that I went to, and asked a series of questions. I knew the leaders. I mean, I had met them before, like in a virtual Zoom room, but a virtual Zoom room is not the same thing
No,
as
face to
being
face.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I actually found I like these two people who I like them anyway, but actually like them much more in person, you know.
Absolutely.
So they demonstrated the qualities. And
Yes.
so I think that you have to really be quiet, ask a lot of questions, be very observant, um, uh, understand why you are asking what you are asking,
Correct.
get really good examples. And then I asked to speak to a couple of other people who had been in, I knew them from a program that they had been in with me.
Yes.
And I just wanted to get their feedback since they worked at those locations. And
Very
it
great.
validated what I saw.
Very great, Annie. You know, I know you and your work for more than 25 years. I can say that. And I was always impressed with your management skills and people's skills. However, we are human. We lost motivation, right? So, how do you stay motivated and inspired to continually improve your work with competencies and competency-based radar tool?
I just know that it makes a difference because I can see what companies are like when they don't do this type of
Yes.
work. And these companies have issues with retention. They have issues with engagement. They
Almost
have,
everybody have those. Almost everybody have dealing with those.
yes, yes. And it's getting worse. It's not getting better.
Oh
And,
my
you know,
God.
people want to attribute it to like, oh, it's a generational thing. It is not a generational
Yeah, I
thing.
was going to say everybody complained with Gen Z's.
No, it is really not. I mean, you know, when people say that to me, I think to myself, there were lazy people, you know, when I was getting started in business. I wasn't one of them, but I knew a lot of lazy people. So you couldn't call that a generational thing, right? So I think that because I know that it really makes a difference, I've seen it. I stay inspired, and then I continue working with clients, you know, utilizing what we develop together. And, you know, for example, in the programs that we do to develop their leaders or high potential leaders, we focus on those competencies that are critical for promotion and for success. And so the coaches work with them on that, and their assessments are geared around that. And then the actual workshops are built around those competencies. And so when you do that, you're creating the right type of leadership and you're creating the right culture. That's how I stay inspired.
Yeah, it's as I'm listening to you, it seems like this matter is very close to your heart and really enjoy doing it. Because if you become work, it becomes tiring.
Yeah.
When you enjoy it and have a personal interest on it, you're inspired by it. Good for you. Very nice. What are some emerging trends or innovations in your field that require the use of competencies and competency-based radar tools?
Access latest and trending CPE courses with my CPE One Unlimited Access subscription. Subscribe now.
You know, it's hard to talk about trends in HR because there's a new trend every day, it seems.
Mm-hmm.
And I probably shouldn't be so flip about it because, you know, I've been doing this kind of work for a long time, but it is the truth. Things just, um, uh, something gets created as, the next relevant topic.
Yeah.
And then there's a lot of buzz about it, right?
Yes.
And then Josh Bersin writes an article, and then Harvard Business Review publishes something, and then MIT Sloan School of Management, puts a new program together. So there's all this stuff that gets created in the wake of someone saying this is, the newest, hottest, latest work that's being done. I don't really think that there are any new trends right now that are worth spending a lot of time talking about, but I will say that what's happening is it's a little bit like what's old is now new again.
Yep. Because bottom line, every company deal with the human psyche, right? Human behavior, human attitude. So it doesn't matter what age category or what generation we are. We still, as a human, have some behavior and the mindset that determine how we work. So engagement and turnover and productivity and performance is a standard everywhere.
Yep.
You have to deal with them differently.
I mean, I think that one of the biggest things that people are concerned with in HR today is how to get people back to the office being productive.
Yes.
And again, that's a cultural thing generated by people being the competencies and the mission, vision, values, that are expressed for the company.
Very good. I'm just going to change the category of the questions a little bit and about demonstrating and applying the competencies. Can you share a specific example of how you have successfully applied competencies and competency-based assessments in a challenging situation?
So I had a client I have a client, one of the issues that they were dealing with, and it was something they couldn't figure out how to fix. They were really trying to fix this. People were spending a lot of time complaining about things and talking about why things weren't working and pointing fingers and blaming HR or the leadership team or, someone always takes the blame, even though it's not necessarily
their fault.
Yes. And so, we went in and we, did an assessment of that functional area, and we actually utilized a DISC assessment and the customized 360.
Yes.
It was wonderful because people had sort of this aha moment, right? Where they realized that they were not behaving in a way appropriate to getting the work done that needed to get done. And they were spending more time on things like gossiping at the water cooler and pointing fingers, which made no difference except to keep creating bad morale.
Environment, yeah.
Right.
I like what you call it, customized 360, because many people just go with that tool as a standard without paying attention to what is going on, especially in that environment with that management. So I bet you're spending a lot of time collecting data, like observation or interviewing or talking to people to collect data, see how do you customize this 360 for them. Very interesting. How do you measure the impact of customized competencies on your work or project? How do you know it's successful or impactful?
How do you
measure them? How do you measure the impact of the work you did?
Oh, measure. How do I measure?
Sorry for my accent.
It's not your accent, it's my hearing. So,
Or both.
no, I know. I've been wearing hearing aids since I was a wee young thing. So, anyway, how you can measure that is any number of ways, but the most common way is in the beginning, there's a baseline. So if 25 people are participating in a program, for example, 25 people go through a customized 360 feedback process. And then there's a whole program for a year, right? They're working with a coach, they attend this workshop, they do this, they do that. There's all these components in the program. And they're working with a coach, and then toward the end of the program, they go through another 360. And you can literally take the two 360s and you can measure the difference. And it's significant. More often than not, it's a significant difference.
And I bet it's surprising for participants themselves to see the
people are always, oh yeah. They get very competitive with this.
Oh yeah, and very empowering also. I can feel they are very empowered by it.
Yeah.
Very great. Now, what are some common misconceptions or challenges people face when trying to utilize customized competencies and or competency-based tool?
I referenced it a couple of times, but I think the biggest issue around this is there are a lot of generic competencies out there. So, this company will say, well, we've been utilizing this, ABC 360 for, 5 years, and it's really great. And I'll ask them, how do you know that this is really great? And they don't really have like a statistic or a KPI or anything. It's more like, well, people feel good when they take this.
They feel good about it and they think that's enough.
Right. And you know what? People really do love getting feedback about themselves. They really do like doing assessments and seeing the results of the assessment. But that doesn't mean it makes any difference. But when you take those assessment results and you actually work with a coach or in a program or with a peer coach, for example, you can begin to sort of see the rewards and the benefits that can occur in utilizing custom competencies.
Very good. How do you stay informed about industry trends, and what resources or publications do you find most valuable?
Yeah. So I subscribe to things like the Harvard Business Review, MIT Sloan School of Management, Right Management, like a lot of these thought leadership places have newsletters that they release, on a monthly basis. And if you stay tuned in, I even look at, what my competition is doing. What is DDI doing? Mm-hmm. What is Korn Ferry doing? What is, what is some other great company doing? Because you can learn from what these other companies are doing.
Something triggered them to use the technology.
Right. And so I read a lot. I probably read a good 5 books a week.
Wow.
Or listen to books on Audible, or re-listen to books on Audible when I'm taking walks. So, for example, Jim Rohn in 1984, I believe it was, maybe a little after, wrote a book called From Good to Great.
Yes.
Okay. Was it Jim Rohn? I don't know. I might have the name wrong, but
I have the book. Yes.
Yes, like in the leadership development field, everyone's read that. Okay, it's sort of a Bible, right? So, if you listen to these books or you read these books like every few years, it's like you never read it before and you learn something new. And so I read a lot of books, and I have books that I'm a huge fan of, that I recommend to people because I think it explains things very clearly. Um, and I read a lot of articles. So, I think it's really funny. I'll be at the airport, waiting for a flight, and I'm in my phone, just like everybody else is. But I'm in my phone, not Facebook. I'm not in Facebook. I'm not in Instagram. I'm not, whatever, in something like that. TikTok.
Yeah,
I don't even have a TikTok account because I'm reading, the latest information about something pertaining to developing leaders.
very great. Very great. Yeah. Now, what are the main challenges facing your industry, and how do businesses navigating through them?
I think that one of the main challenges in the industry today is how to keep people inspired, and motivated. Um, People will often say, my manager doesn't inspire me, my manager doesn't, motivate me. It's not your manager's job to inspire or motivate you. It's your job to be inspired and motivated. And what do you need to do in order to be inspired and motivated? But if you didn't know what you should be working on from a competency perspective, it would be really hard um, to figure that out.
Yes, I understand.
Yeah.
This way, you put in a personal responsibility on their court.
Yes.
And there's a difference between management and parenting. That's
Yes.
a big difference. And
I like that.
they always look at the manager as a parent. I always tell the managers and supervisors,
Right.
regardless who you are or who they are, in their mindset, they're always avoiding parents. They
Right.
always either like you as a parent or not like you as a parent. It make a difference in their performance and the relationship with you.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that the other real big challenge in the industry, in the world of business today is, um, sort of, keeping up with, what's happening in your field. I mean, it's amazing how many people have no idea what their competition is doing.
Hmm.
If you don't know what your competition's doing, that's a problem.
Yeah.
And so, I would say that, people tend to sort of, work in a sort of like in a vacuum, in a bubble. Um, and it's a big challenge. And lots of companies are trying to figure out ways to get their people a global perspective.
Yes. It's a challenge.
Yeah.
Speaking of challenge, it's not instead of questions I write, but just thinking. Share with us a story of challenges you face with people's resistance to your leadership or training in competencies. Give
Mm-hmm.
us a couple of stories of challenges and how you overcome.
Well, I was working with a very big company that specializes in coffee.
Coffee. Interesting.
Yeah. Um, and everybody knows this company because there's one on every corner.
I
So,
understand.
yeah,
I already named them on your introduction. Yes.
yeah. And, they recognize that they were working sort of from an old paradigm, but they didn't know what to do about it. They knew they needed new competencies. They knew they needed a refresh. And so the challenge is, first of all, the cost of doing that kind of work, right? Like, are you going to pay to get the refresh, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the second aspect is, how do you roll that out? How do you inform people? how do you get people to start working with those competencies when they're so accustomed to the way things were?
Yes.
So I would say it's the implementation of what gets created if you're willing to invest in what gets created.
Very good.
It breaks my heart when I hear that companies don't want to undertake something because of a budgeting issue.
Oh, yeah. Well, you can't blame them because the money issue is always there. The kind of, in some cases, dominating what need to get done, and they're stopping them.
Yeah.
Any story of personal challenge, like somebody was resisting you, a manager, a supervisor, an influencer in the company that kind of raised the wall against the new approach in competency, and how you overcome?
Well, you get a lot of that when you do this kind of work. So you sort of get used to like resistance, dealing with resistance, right? Anytime you try to implement anything new, right? Change causes resistance.
Absolutely.
So I have lots of stories about people who were not warm and fuzzy about, this kind of thing. And I would make a deal with them. Like, are you willing to come along with me on this ride? Give me, 6 months. Let's work on this for 6 months. And if you see no change, no benefit, okay, no problem. You don't have to do this. But if you do see change or a benefit, then you're going to become the biggest promoter of this.
Yes.
And guess what happens?
Most probably all of them, when they bring a shield down, they see so much value personally and professionally.
Yeah.
And they become your biggest advocate.
That's right. And so, it's a little bit like you're making friends with your enemies, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, and you're giving them an option where they can take, they have a choice. So
very good.
You can't force this on people.
No. If they see the light end of the tunnel, they come towards it. If not, some of them have some stories that they stick to it for decades, and they're not willing to let it go.
And I've had people, by the way, who were detractors or derailers or whatever you want to call them,
problem makers,
who actually made the biggest contribution to the success of the competency model, because they were in a focus group. They argued for something from their perspective, and you know what? It was valid.
What do you mean? Their argue was valid?
Yeah, what they had something to say about, some competency that everyone thought, should be like the top competencies, the top leadership competencies. And they didn't agree. And they were very vocal and they were very loud and they had a lot of influence in the company. And I started to hear about it, from different people, like, John Doe is saying this, John Doe is saying that. So I started to hear about it. So I went and talked to John Doe and said, why don't you and I just have a conversation about this?
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to learn what it is you see that I don't see.
Some of it is the way they feel like nobody interested to what they have to say. And that is, then we have to work with the side of the listeners about what is in the way that you're not listening to this contribution.
Right.
That is kind of the magic of effective communication and active listening. In terms of resistance and letting go, I always use this story from Book of Zen. In a discipline of Buddhism, the masters always use the stories to make a point of transformation. And this guy walking down the road, coming to a village, and he see all the shops are open, but nobody's in the shops, nobody's in the village. Walking down, hearing commotion, walking towards the commotion, he sees a big pond, and people around the pond are screaming at the pond, let go, it's gonna drown you, let go. He get close and see a woman in the water holding a big rock, taking water up and down, her clothing is ripping off, almost drowning, and this guy screamed, why you not letting go? And the woman said, it's mine. Like holding on something that drowning you, holding on something that is ineffective, working against your interest, but some people really don't know how to let it go. And I promise you, your approach of calm and collected to that John Doe, that, hey, I'm interested, let's talk, is not putting a cold water on the fire. It just make a difference. And as you said, with your experience, they come back and become your partner, which is amazing. Very amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I really, I did have great mentors. I did learn, from some great people, and I didn't wake up one day knowing how to do this, right?
Yeah.
I learned from my mentors, and I think that if there's one talent, that any leader should really invest time and effort into, one is winning people over.
Yeah.
I have to think of a better way to say that as a competency, but
having a positive influence on people, and people feel safe with you.
Yeah.
That's a big, I don't want to call it challenge, but mastery in the competency. That having people trust you and be safe with you and talk to you.
Yep.
Very good. I have 4 more questions.
Okay.
It's a future-based, I wrote. Okay. What's the biggest lesson you have learned along the way of doing what you're doing?
That today's answer may not be tomorrow's answer.
Yes.
So just because something has worked for the past, month or year, doesn't mean it's going to work for the next month or year. And so you have to look with new eyes, with a fresh perspective, to make sure that the competencies you're using, the tools you're using, are beneficial and support the goal you're trying to achieve.
Very good lesson. What advice would you give to someone starting out in your field?
Honestly, I think the best thing that I ever did was I went to work for a couple of powerhouse global companies that were leaders in their field around training and development, and learning and development, which are 2 different things, and had a lot of great leaders and facilitators in these companies that taught me the things that I needed to know to be able to talk about competencies or this field or whatever I happen to be working on, successfully, fluidly. And so I learned. I was a student, and I did this by working for others. I was very smart, and I had a master's degree, and I, could have figured out how to do this on my own, probably, after some period of time and reading enough books and watching enough videos. But it's not the same thing as seeing true masters at work.
Yes.
And so I would say to somebody, go get a job working for this company or that company, depending upon what it was that they wanted to do.
Yes.
So this is part of why it's important to know what your competition is doing. So I did that. I went and worked for these different companies so that I could learn.
Yes, I like what you said about being a student. There's a time to time that you need to put the ego aside and be a student and learn from masters.
Yes. And I always made sure I had a great coach. I always made sure I had a great mentor, which are two different things. Coach is not the same thing as your manager, which is not the same thing as your mentor. So I made sure that I set myself up to be the best student I possibly could be.
Good for you. Very inspiring. Good for you. What is the next big milestones you are working toward?
Boy, that's a loaded question. The next big milestones. Well, I'm working on creating a lot of new content for some of my clients who are building necessary programs internally for developing their leaders. And it's really important to them because it's part of their succession planning strategy. And so there's a project plan for every one of these initiatives. And so I'm very focused every day on meeting the milestones associated with these, initiatives. But, at the same time, you have to have some balance, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's my pickleball goals.
Yes.
Right? Because believe it or not, I became a certified pickleball instructor in part to be a better leader.
Awesome. Very cool.
So it wasn't just because I love playing pickleball, but I have my pickleball goals, and then I have my stack of books, that I'm interested in reading and haven't gotten to yet. And then there's health goals, and then there's ultimately retirement goals.
Yes, both of us.
Yes.
That. Yes. Which is bring me to the last question before some general conversation I'm going to have with you is, where do you see your work heading in the next year?
In the next year, I've been in the process of bringing on some new coaches and facilitators because while I've always had coaches like in Asia or in Europe, England or Germany, etc., I have, a significant demand right now in Mexico. So, when you go to other countries, business is not conducted the same way as it is in the United States.
No, even a state by a state is different.
Yes. And, there's different levels of formality, and there's, different things that are respected and admired that we respect and admire here in the US. So, if you go out to Silicon Valley and you walked around and you saw everybody with messy hair and blue jeans, right? And, driving their, I don't even know what it is, Volkswagen Bugs, or their, I don't even know what kind of car it is today. That would never fly in
some different cultures, yeah.
Right. In other cities. Okay. So it's understanding, what is valued, and, then being able to reinvent that elsewhere.
Very good. Now, given I told you the audience for this podcast are mostly HR executives, HR directors, HR professionals, human resources development consultants, HRD facilitators. From your professional point of view, what is one or two advice you have for these professionals in relation to competency-based assessment, or understanding their people's competency, or how they can develop or start working on developing competency for their people? I know it's a big question, but
no, I think it's a great question. I think it's the right question to be asking, really. I would say the first thing is start reading. If you're not already reading, start reading. So there's a ton of reading material out there about competencies and why they're important and the benefit of them. Harvard Business Review publishes, stuff about it all the time. And there's books coming out about it. So start reading. The second thing is I think there's nothing wrong with asking someone if you can shadow them. If you know someone in this big industry of ours who's really great at something, ask if you can be their student.
Mm-hmm.
So I was at a conference in January, and I met this extraordinary woman. And like when you meet someone, they're like the brightest light in the room. She was the brightest light in the room. And I thought to myself, man, if I could have 10 of her and I could just sort of mold and shape them, like everything would be solved, right? Every learning and development need in the world would be solved. It's so interesting because I had this feeling, well, she had a feeling, right? And she saw me present something at the conference, and she came up to me afterwards and she said, this is going to sound really crazy, but can I just, follow you, carry your bag, help you set up, the projector, go to your client trainings with you. I want to learn how you do what you do. She said, I'll do it on my dime. I'm not asking you to pay for anything. This is my training program.
Wow.
And so, there was no reason for me to say no.
No, very humbling, actually.
It was. I was so honored that this bright light wanted to follow me because I wanted to follow her.
Very nice.
So I think that you can, find someone that you can adopt so you can learn from them, learn whatever it is, their methodology, their facilitation style. How do you conduct a focus group? How do you crunch the data? How do you aggregate 360 information? All these things, that I can do in my sleep now. Once upon a time, I didn't know how to do.
Yes.
And someone had to teach me how to do it.
Walk you through it. Yes.
Yeah.
What final advice you have for coaches or consultants who do similar work to yours?
I think that thing that I said about, yesterday's answers are not necessarily today's answers. So there's a lot of outdated methodology out there.
Yes.
There's a lot of I don't know. It's just not new. It's not current.
They're wrapping in a new wrapping paper and they're producing the same thing.
Yes, yes. And, nothing changes if nothing changes.
Yes.
And so if you don't take a look at what you're currently doing, and how you're doing it, and do a refresh if you can see that it's needed, or if somebody you trust provides you with objective feedback to tell you that needs to be done. Like I ask my clients all the time for feedback.
Good. Very great. Very great.
And, lots of times the biggest breakthroughs, the best learning I ever get is that feedback that they give me that may not feel so warm and fuzzy.
I agree.
But it's right.
I agree. Annie, I don't get tired talking to you. Years of experience, years of developing mastery and showing up in the great work you do with people. So I am very much grateful for your time. Thank you for making yourself available and contribute to people who watching this podcast through MYCPE website.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me. Anytime.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Have a great day.
You too. Bye.
Access latest and trending CPE courses with my CPE One Unlimited Access subscription. Subscribe now.